Hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my channel and another STAMPtember 2025 limited edition exclusive video. Today's collaboration is with Pretty Pink Posh, one of my favorite brands, and this is the Posh Roses stamp set. Like all of the limited edition collaborations, these are one and done. When they sell out, they're not restocked. However, all the brands have fabulous products, Pretty Pink Posh being no exception. I have many videos on my channel using Pretty Pink Posh products. I'll have a link to the brand in the description box below the video. Very much worth checking out. So many good stamps and dies and bling. So much bling. Love. So, I stamped all of the images from this Posh Roses set onto some Neenah Desert Storm cardstock with clear embossing ink, and I'd used my anti-static powder tool on it first. Stamped the images with the clear embossing ink, and then I am covering everything with some detail white embossing powder, and then I'm going to melt that with my heat tool. And then once everything is melted, I am going to paint these with distress watercolor pencils. Now, I have a palette that I am going to show here in a second. At the very end of this video, in the end screen, I will link to the video I did showing exactly how I made this palette. Yeah, it's really quite simple, and I've got all these colors at the ready, and this is generally how I prefer to use the distress watercolor pencils. It's convenient, and it works. And the other thing I love is because distress watercolor pencils have pigments in them, they show up on darker colors of cardstock, and they show up really nicely on the Neenah Desert Storm. The thing to remember is this is just cardstock. This is not watercolor paper. So it can handle this within reason. Because it is not watercolor paper, you can't use like a ton of water. I don't do a lot of layering. You know, the things that you can do with watercolor paper, you just can't do with regular cardstock. And you will know because the cardstock will start to like pill or pull apart, things like that. However, it works pretty good with this sort of stuff. I've even done like watercoloring like this with like Distress Oxide inks. That looks really nice on Desert Storm cardstock as well. So yeah, I just paint with them and then let it dry, and it's good. So I was mixing colors. I'm using my little water brush. I'd added a little bit of water to the colors I wanted to use. That just helps kind of soften it, makes things go a little smoother. And I used picked raspberry, and I think the yellow I was using was fossilized amber. I never did label the colors in this palette. I know a lot of them just by the look of them. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I think this was fossilized amber. That or mustard seed. Either one works. With something like this, I just kind of wanted to do that, pinky yellowy sort of look for these little roses. And I would just paint the yellow, paint on the picked raspberry, and then kind of mix them a little bit with my little water brush, and then go on to the next little petal. And then for the greenery, like the leaves, my go-to distress green combo, which is always, like almost always, Twisted Citron and Rustic Wilderness, because I can't help myself. I like those two together a lot, and it's just what I reach for. So that's what I did. I painted on a bit of the Twisted Citron, and then I would paint on the Rustic Wilderness, mix them a little bit so that there wasn't like just straight lines, and then that's it. Really simple coloring. Of course, I did speed this up quite a bit in editing. I don't paint this fast, but still pretty simple coloring. These images were just another one of those types of sets where it's very approachable, in my opinion. You just kind of take it petal by petal and like section by section, and you're good to go. So after I finished painting them, I die cut them, set them aside. I grabbed another panel of the Neenah Desert Storm cardstock, and I'm using the Simon Says Stamp thank you text background, something I use quite often, and I inked it up with Cozy Positively Saturated ink, and I'm just pressing this panel right into it. And this is A2 size, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. So I'm stamping that background onto this panel of cardstock. Just going to add, all that text. Love it. And then I pulled out This is the fancy Lattice stencil from Pretty Pink Posh. This came out ages ago. I will have links to all the things with the supplies. And this stencil, the opening is slightly smaller than A2 sized. Not a big deal because this pattern repeats itself really easily. So you can like really use it on any size of cardstock that you want, you know, because you just have to shift the stencil a little bit and you're good to go. So I applied white pigment ink over this with a little sponge applicator, and then I'll just shift the stencil up a little bit. I'd stuck the background to one of my grip mats, same with the stencil, and then yeah, after applying the ink, shifted the stencil up, matched up the pattern, and then sponged on the remaining bit of white pigment ink, and that finished off the background. And then I die cut that background with a rectangle wafer die. And I also die cut some vellum with another favorite of mine, Pretty Pink Posh Eyelet rectangle wafer die. And I'll come back to those in a minute. So another set I pulled out was the Many Thanks Shadow die set from Pretty Pink Posh. I've talked about this a lot. The font choice that she uses for her like sentiment wafer dies and the stamp sets, a favorite. I love it. I love that script font. It's so perfect. It's so perfect. So I die cut the sentiment multiple times from white cardstock and then glued them together to build up the dimension. And I didn't use the shadows for those dies, just the words. And then another oldie but goodie set, I used the Friend Greetings stamp set and pulled out the You're the Best sentiment from that set. And I'm going to stamp it onto the inside of my card base, which is also Desert Storm cardstock. This is a top folding A2 note card, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I stamped the sentiment with that same cozy ink. And then I glued that one little rosebud onto the inside to finish it off. And then that panel that I had stamped and stenciled on, the frame left over from die cutting the rectangle, I'm adhering directly to my card base with liquid glue. And then I'm going to adhere the vellum piece that I die cut with the Eyelet rectangle wafer die. And then that rectangle that I die cut, I'm going to pop this up with some Big Mama foam tape just to build a smidge of dimension. So, and then everything will be sort of seamless. So I put some liquid glue just right onto the card base here that I'm going to press the vellum into. And this is what I talk about when I talk about how you can see adhesive through vellum. It ain't pretty. This doesn't matter though, because this is getting covered up. But now you can see what I mean. It's just blobby looking. So covering that up though with the panel, and we're good to go. And then I don't have footage. I adhered the sentiments again with liquid glue, and then I adhered all of the florals and greenery that I had painted. Those I popped up with the Big Mama foam tape as well. And first, I don't know. There's no footage. My camera ate it. You know, my dog ate my homework. My camera ate my footage. No idea, y'all. It went into the ether somewhere. So I adhered them, as you can see. And then, of course, I'm going to add splatter because that's just what we do. So I put a bit of white gouache onto my palette, put the card into my splat box. I thinned out the white gouache a bit with a bit of water, and then I'm going to splatter it. And then I just realized now I didn't even need to do that. I could have just kept using the Distress palette because the Picket Fence is in my little palette, and I've used that one for splatter many times. Either one works. So splattered on the white gouache, and then I used the palette to splatter on some of the picked raspberry, because that's another thing I like using this palette for. Is it's a convenient little splatter palette for me. I've got all the colors, half the colors. I still need to do new palettes, because when I did this palette originally, we only had the 36 colors of Distress watercolor pencil, and then however much later they released all the rest of the colors. And people have been asking me about that, and I've been working on it. It's those that have seen my original video, it's time consuming. So I'll get to it. Anyway, put a little bit of water in the picked raspberry color, swirled my fan brush in that, and splattered the card with this as well. Let everything dry. And then last but not least, I added some little watermelon gems, watermelon jewels from Pretty Pink Posh. I don't think these are even available anymore, but there's a little Valentine's mix that's similar. This was the first thing, like one of the first things that Pretty Wing Posh released was like the bling. So many years ago. It's been what, 10 years now? Something. Yeah. I've been a fan since the get-go. Anyway, scattered a few jewels on this card front, adhered them into place with the glue, and that finished it off. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, I will have links to all of the things in the description box below the video. So if you just expand that, it's all there. You can check it out below if you're interested. Thank you all so very much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting. It does help a lot and I very much appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!